tomorrow are really going to be focused on how important it is for us to be kind to each other. And I just feel so lucky that we're all in this community together, and that we are all, for the very much for the most part, really kind to each other. And it's been kind of a little intention of mine, even as we were praying, just thinking about all the ways we're davening together, the ways we're praying together, whether people are showing up in person or showing up virtually, and how in a large degree, every time we pray together, it's just this act of great coming together and compassion and kindness, making ourselves available, being present with each other. So I spent a lot of time reading folk tales about Elijah in preparation for Rosh Hashanah. I thought that if I could just find a really good Elijah story, it would be the perfect thing for the sermon that I plan to give tomorrow. Because, in the paradigmatic Elijah story, he shows up usually, if you're not familiar, but many of you probably are, in disguise. Usually as a penniless beggar or traveler, but almost always as someone who is deeply in need of compassion, in need of somebody else's care. And often the people that he is showing up to are themselves people who are really in a difficult place. They're poor, they're oppressed, they're alone, they're suffering. But still, when Elijah approaches them and asks for food or asks for a place to stay for Shabbat, they see Elijah. They can tell that he's in pain and that he's suffering. And they always say something to him like, "I have almost nothing, but what I have, I will share with you." And they welcome him in. Now, of course, they don't know it's Elijah because he's in disguise. And they don't realize that they've just welcomed in this sort of supernatural angel in human form. Sometimes their Shabbat table will immediately fill up with food. Or sometimes another miracle will occur in the future. Perhaps they'll be granted wealth, or the thing that they had been wishing for will happen. But the overarching moral of all of these stories is that when we respond to someone in pain, when we respond to somebody in pain with compassion, a blessing happens. A blessing occurs. That our own suffering becomes a little bit more bearable. And sometimes, whatever it was we thought we were struggling with actually flips, and we see that the other side of the coin is a blessing, is a gift. So I was really looking hard for exactly that story, but I couldn't find just the right Elijah story for my sermon tomorrow. So at some point I remembered that our theme this year was creation. So I thought maybe I should just, write my own Elijah story. And actually I did write a story inspired by Elijah. And if you're curious about that, I will be giving that tomorrow at the children's services at 9:30. And then afterwards you can ask me about it if you aren't able to make it. But also, as part of my research this summer for our theme, in particular, as I was thinking about the creative side of our theme, I read a little book about the creative process called How to Write One Song by the singer and songwriter Jeff Tweedy from the band Wilco. So Jeff Tweedy writes regarding our ego and creativity. "I'm not going to argue that it shouldn't matter whether or not the art you make is good, but I will argue that how you judge the art you make is nowhere near as important as the act of creation itself." So back when I thought I was going to be writing a sermon about Elijah, and inspired by Jeff Tweedy, I tried, whenever I sat down, to write creatively, to write a little poetry. So spoiler alert, tomorrow I gave up on the Elijah sermon. But in the spirit of affirming creativity and the process of creation, tonight I want to share with you the poem that I tried to write while trying to write my Elijah sermon. Elijah is knocking. When Elijah knocks, I hope I don't feel self-conscious because the house is a mess. When Elijah knocks, I hope I don't feel embarrassed at how I was spending my time just at the knock. When Elijah knocks, I want to say, come on in. When Elijah knocks, I hope I'm playing my guitar. I want to have a line of poetry just at hand, ready to share. When Elijah knocks, I should be cooking a great Shabbos meal for a house full of guests with polka music playing in the background. When Elijah stops me on the street, I pray I will look him in the eye. When it rains, I want to share my umbrella with Elijah. When Elijah asks if I can buy him a cup of coffee, I should splurge on a venti. When Elijah plays electric guitar at 1 a.m, will it sound like Debbie Friedman? Will it sound like Dick Dale? If it sounds like my teenage son, will I still yell, "Turn it down, I'm sleeping"? When Elijah whispers his plea for hospitality, I pray the sounds of leaf blowers and coffee grinders, car horns, podcasts, I pray they won't drown out his voice. When Elijah shows up, I really hope I get the fun-loving, wine-drinking, life of the party Elijah, and not the smiting false prophets Elijah. When Elijah knocks, it will put my own suffering in perspective. If Elijah is in pain, and if my eyes well up with tears, may Elijah not be worried that he is burdening me. When Elijah knocks, I want to turn towards him with ease. When Elijah knocks, I want my mind to be open and quiet, a blue sky after a storm, an empty stadium before a big game, a pond early in the morning before the first swim. I want to just welcome him in without judgment, without shame, without expectation or demand. I want to sit quietly, listening until I know just what it is this angel seeks, what this prophet requires. When Elijah knocks, I hope my heart breaks open. I want to feel tears on my cheeks. I want to greet him with a smile. Jeff Tweedy, thinking about our capacity to be creative, writes that it is so stark, so healing to see someone's eyes light up, to see how they become more human when they realize that they have the power to make something that moments ago wasn't even there. He writes, "Creation is a power that we reserve for God to manifest things out of thin air." How incredible is that? He suggests we close our eyes for a minute and imagine the color blue, or imagine a sound. How did you do that? You created that. We have these rainbow bracelets, and they say on them, B'nai Keshet, creating together. We chose the theme of creation for the year because it seems so clear that we will be creating and recreating how we pray together, how we celebrate together, how we build community together this year. I'm so glad that Tess spoke in their Devarlet about how the power to create, how we have the power to create and recreate ourselves. Because a core message of Rosh Hashanah is that we can create ourselves anew. We can change. And whenever we do that, the world is reborn. L'shana tova umetuka. May this be a good year. May it be a wonderfully sweet year. Baruch Tieh. We continue on page 1202 with the Aleinu.